Hello everyone, I'm Nature Angel, and today I'm going to be going over the testing kits that I decided to get as a first year school psychologist working in an elementary school and a middle school. I'm gonna show you what I can for the testing kits and talk a little bit about what each one does. I'm not gonna go into too much detail about the achievement test and the cognitive test because I feel like a lot of people, if you're going into school psychology, you know what that is because that's what everyone thinks about when they think of school psychologist is the IQ test. So I'm gonna go over the other stuff first. And let's get started. So I have a lot of rating scales, and let's start with the C-TONI. That is the comprehensive test of nonverbal intelligence. And the C-TONI comes with books and the record form, but I'm not sure if I can show you the record forms for any of the tests, so the record forms or the rating scales. So I'll just show you like the outside of the books, but basically the record forms are where all of the answers go when you're doing the test. So for the C-TONI, it's an IQ or cognitive test that is nonverbal. So you might want to do this with a kid that, let's say that they have speech problems, speech and language problems, but you want to see where they're at in terms of their cognitive abilities, because if you're reading directions to them and they don't understand what you're saying because they have some sort of speech or phonological processing problem or something of the sort, then you might not get an accurate representation of their IQ cognitive score. So you might want to use something like the C-TONI where you're not giving them the directions verbally and you're seeing what they can do, because they might have a higher score on that versus, let's say you did the WISC where you're giving them the directions and they're getting everything wrong just because they simply do not understand what you're saying. I know sometimes people also use the nonverbal intelligence test if you are testing a kid where English is not their first language, but again, you have to be careful with that just because sometimes some of the tests are not normed for their culture. So you get rid of the language issue that you could have when giving the assessments, but if the questions are culturally related and they're not from America, they also might score lower. So just keep that in mind if you're testing a kid with English as a second language and they were not, born in the US. Another type of test that I got is the C-TOP, and the C-TOP 2 is the comprehensive test of phonological processing. So it had two different record forms. One was for kids 4 to 6, and the other is from 7 to 24-year-olds. So you have from a kid to a young adult. And in the kit, there's a book, but that book is for the younger kids, so the 4 to 6-year-olds, and everything else is pretty much done on a audio like CD or online. I think now you could just go on the website and play the audio on there instead of trying to put in a CD player, because I know like almost no one has CD players anymore. So that's how that test is done, and it tests for phonological processing. So you can get information on students that might have reading issues or even evidence for or against something like dyslexia. So that would be a good test to see where they are and where they're struggling exactly if you think that a kid has a phonological processing disorder. I also have the Connors 3, and that's a rating scale. It came with a lot actually. It had the short form, the book that explains everything, and then it had the long form. And you can have the student do a self-report, the teachers, and the parents. Connors can be used for kids age 6 to 18, except if you're doing the self-report part, I think the kid has to be at least 8 years old. Like you can't give a 6-year-old the self-report, I'm pretty sure. But the Connors is mostly focusing on students that may be presenting ADHD problems. So this might be a rating scale that you want to use if you're looking at a kid that you think could possibly have ADHD. I also have the brief 2, which again is also used for the students, parents, and teachers. It is also usually used as well for ADHD, because specifically measuring executive functioning, which is something that you look at for ADHD. And I believe, I have to double check, but I believe for the brief 2 is 11 to 18. 11 to 18 or 5 to 18. But again, it's just another type of rating scale that you can use to look at different things. Obviously, the rating scales are different, even if they're measuring the same thing. Like, some people prefer one or the other. So that's a personal choice that you would have to make for what you want to use it on. And they are looking at ADHD symptoms, but you can use it for a bunch of other things as well. Like, you can, for example, like with the executive functioning, you can look at it and see where they're at, like how severe something is, if there are certain behaviors on there that you might see in the classroom. So you can use it if a kid is possibly going in for ADHD symptoms, but just remember that you can get a lot of information out of these rating scales. Another thing I got is the ABAS-3, which is another rating scale, except this is a rating scale that's on kind of like adaptive functioning, your daily living skills, what you do day to day. So this would be something good to use if, let's say, you're testing a kid and you think that the kid might have an intellectual disability or autism or a developmental delay. This will give you some feedback from the rating scales for if they were delayed growing up and what the parents saw. And plus, if you are trying to label a kid ID, usually for most schools, what they do is they have to have a certain cognitive score. It has to be really low, and have rating scales that are saying their daily living skills just aren't as high as you would expect them to be for their age level. So this would be something good to do, as I said, for like autism, developmental delay, ID, and just trying to see where a kid is at, because you need to make sure that the kids have those adaptive skills. Another rating scale that I got was the BASC, and the BASC came with so many. So I have the young kids, like literally from preschool all the way up until college age. And, you know, obviously it breaks it down, and then you have the teacher rating scales and the parent forms as well. Also got the structured developmental history and the student observation forms, just because, I don't know, I am a first year and I didn't know what I need. Like, I shouldn't be working with a kid that's in college, but if I have a kid that I have to go to and they're in a high school, then, you know, I might want to use that. So basically what the BASC does, it's measuring the child's behavior and how they are acting in their environment. So it can give you a good picture. For example, let's say there's a kid coming in and they think that the kid has behavioral issues in school. Well, maybe you want to give the BASC to a teacher, then you want to give another one to a parent, and one to the kid. What if the parent says that the kid has been totally fine at home, you know, there's no problems, and then you have that one teacher saying there's a bunch of issues, then maybe you give it to a different teacher and they don't see those issues. You know, you can go from there and see what to do, but that's giving you a view of what the behavior is and is it being seen across different environments. So it's pretty helpful in trying to figure out how a kid is behaving and where, and if it's happening consistently. Has it always happened? Does it happen in certain situations? So I feel like the BASC gives you a lot of information, and that's also why I kind of wanted every age group, because right now I'm in elementary and a middle school, but like I said, what if I go to a high school or have to cover for someone on a particular student that is in high school? You know, I just never know, so I want to be prepared. For autism, I got the CARS 2, Childhood Autism Rating Scale. So I know a lot of people like to use the ADOS. I actually didn't get the ADOS, and if I needed it, I could ask one of the other school psychs in my district, because they said that they have a lot. But For this, it's a rating scale that you would give to help identify autism and the severity, if there's any developmental disabilities, and it just kind of gives you a look at the kid if you are suspecting autism. So I know I have so many rating scales, but I personally like rating scales because then you can get a view from the teacher and the parents. So you get the home and the school, and if the kid's old enough, you could even ask the kid what they think, because you know their answers might match up, or they might think there's no problem when the teacher and the parent are seeing a variety of whatever the problem is. So that's why I like rating scales, just so that I can get a view of everything from everyone involved. I think it's super helpful. But lastly, here are my cognitive and achievement tests. So I decided to use the Wyatt for the achievement and the Whisk for the cognitive. I personally like using the Whisk and the Wyatt for younger kids, and that's what I have. I have elementary and middle school. Of course, that would be up to you, because some people like using the WJ. I would want to use the WJ if I was doing high school students, just because it's usually longer, and to me, I feel like it's more in depth. But again, that's up to you. When I was in internship, we use the Wace and the Wyatt, which is basically like the Whisk, but for older age group, because the Whisk is from age 6 to 16, but the Wyatt can be used from ages 4 to 50. So that's a big range, but I just like the questions in there and I'm super comfortable with them. So the reason why I did this last is because if you're testing a kid, you need your achievement test and you need your cognitive test, and that is what I was saying earlier, like how everyone thinks of a school psychologist. They think of the cognitive testing and the achievement testing. So of course I had that. Those are the two that I choose. And honestly, in my school, I don't know if it'll change, but what they were saying based on the past is that we usually don't get a lot of initial evaluations. Usually there's not even 50 a year, which I feel like in grad school, all I heard was that you get like maybe 100 a year, like a huge caseload, but they said they usually don't, so we will see. And also for revals, like I think right now at the elementary school, of course it can change, but I'm pretty sure I have about 15 to 20. So it's still not a lot, but I feel like especially when you're doing reevaluations, the rating scales are very helpful. And when you're doing initials or you need to test again, you'll want to use your cognitive and achievement test. Also, sometimes you want to use a different cognitive and achievement test if, let's say, the kid was tested not that long ago and you have to test them again, because then the questions will be completely different if you use a different type of testing. But anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Again, this is just the stuff that I chose to use because before I came into the job, I got the offer and they told me to start thinking about tests and rating skills and all that I would like to have. So I sat down with my internship supervisor, which I would suggest that you do. And she was telling me all of the stuff that I should think about getting, and then I picked those items and I got them, and I feel like it's pretty good for a first year school psych. But again, it'll vary depending on the grade level, how many evals you're getting, and you also want to keep in mind like how many you want to order, because they also ask the quantity, like did I need a whole kit, did I only need the scoring sheets, the protocols. And since I knew I needed the whole kit, you know, but let's say they asked next year when I've been working, I would only need the forms to fill out, not the whole kit, because I have the books. So that's something to keep in mind. But I really hope that you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful rest of your week and day or night, wherever you are in the world. And again, thank you so much for watching. Bye.